Hello my loves, welcome to my channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about the hidden power of working with your guides. So stay tuned if that sounds like your bag, give us a like and subscribe and let's get going. So you might notice a tiny little bit of banging in the background because we've got some building work going on, but I had to do the video because you can't just wait around in this world. Things have to be done, right? So if you hear a bit of banging and shit like that, sorry about that. Let's get back to the subject. So the hidden power of working with your guides. Ooh, I absolutely love this topic. And the reason I love this topic is because over the years, specifically over the last 6 to 7 years, I have personally developed a very strong relationship with my guides, ancestors, angels, ascended masters, and certain high vibrational beings that I have a strong connection to. As a physical medium, I work with them quite closely in varying different aspects of my work and my life and my path, etc. So I thought I would share with you the power of actually working with guides and why they are so unbelievably important in many senses to be able to reconnect you to your soul's path, to allow you to remember what your soul came here to do. So let's get going. What are guides, number one? So guides are essentially high vibrational beings in the sense that they vibrate at a much higher frequency than, let's say, some of the dense matter, physical body, the chair that I'm sitting on, this more material world. These high vibrational beings are vibrating at a higher frequency in the sense of the energy is moving faster, it's a faster frequency, so we can't see it like we would see our bodies, for example. Yeah, similar to the chakra system. So if you know anything about yogic chakra systems, which is basically our subtle anatomy, our subtle physiology, this energy body, it can't be seen because these chakras are vibrating at a different frequency to this very physical matter that we are used to. Physical matter is also energy, right? It's just vibrating at a much denser frequency so that we can see it with these physical eyes. So high vibrational beings or guides are essentially given to us as our soul connects to our body when we get born into this earthly plane. And these guides are part of our mission. They are part of our journey as a soul having a human experience in this beautiful vessel that we've been given. And they are there to, well, it says it on the tin, right? Guide us and support us as souls on this earthly mission. Think of them like a work team. We are all a team working together to allow the soul to get from destination A to destination B in this whirlwind we call life. So let's talk a little bit about guides. Guides can come in many different forms. Some people like to call them spirit guides. Sometimes we might call them ancestors, so they might come in the form of ancestors, angels, ascended masters, varying different high vibrational beings that people describe in different ways that are part of our journey. Now, different guides have different sort of roles, if you like, and different guides come in and out of our experience of life at different times. So ancestors, for example, are ancestors that might be in our lineage that have passed away but are very connected to our soul's path. Maybe they have had similar gifts, talents, skills, and have been very, very connected to this lineage of this soul. So for example, I have a specific ancestor in my guides who is my Auntie Dora. I'm actually named after Aunt Dora. I'm called Polly Dora and she was called Dora. I was named after her because my father said that I was similar to her. And apparently she was this sort of quite batty, what they might call a witch of the village, and was very, very misunderstood. She loved traveling, she loved music, she loved art and poetry, and she was quite solitary in this sense. She has been somebody that I have connected to. I've got her diaries. She does Kriya yoga. She used to do Kundalini yoga, which is so strange for a Westerner back in that time. So it's probably very, very hidden and not very mainstream. So as I went through a spiritual awakening many years ago, this was one of the ancestors that I connected to first and foremost. And she comes through very direct, and she is often a guide when I am feeling quite low. So she comes through and she's very good for picking up the spirit. So there's ancestors that are part of your spirit guide team, and they have this lineage. So there are often people who interpret ancestors as coming through as part of their spirit team in a very supportive way, in a very grounded way. They naturally feel like family when they come through. So they can be very encouraging, and they can feel very comforting, and they feel like home when you connect to them. We also have maybe angels, what you would probably put into the spirit team in that sense. Angels, I connect to angels in a different way. I tend to connect to ancestors for guidance and support, and when I'm feeling a little bit lonely or disconnected, and when I need to sort of re-establish the connection to my soul, what I'm doing here, what's going on. If I'm feeling a little bit lost, my ancestors are very grounding in that sense. And angels, I tend to connect to them when I need a little bit of help moving something out the way. So if something feels like too much of a job for me to do by my little self, I might assign a task to an angel. It might be something that needs healing. It might be if I feel like there is quite a deep emotional baggage that's going on, that I need help with some sort of grieving process, or I often assign angels to do some Reiki or some healing work on my body, and they'll do that through the vessel of my hands. So this is my experience of working with angels and ancestors and guides. Often we have a gate master, so somebody who's sort of like guarding and protecting this team of guides, right? And this is my experience of working with them. I'll speak a little bit deeper about this as we get into the video. But essentially, everybody experiences their spirit team in different ways. So I want to get into a couple of ways in which we might start to learn how to work with spirit guides. So we'll do that in a second. Before I get into it, I really want to talk about the power of working with spirit guides and why we might want to start to form a relationship with our spirit team. So number one, the first thing is when we are moving through a journey of reconnecting to our soul, which is essentially the journey of awakening the spirit and coming back to our own truth, beyond the conditioning, beyond the roles and the dogma and the stigma and all of the stuff that we sort of hoard as we move through life. The subconscious, what the subconscious psyche and body stores as old memories, unprocessed emotions, old beliefs, stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves and the world around us. As we start to connect to a deeper spiritual journey, the journey back to the soul, the journey back home to self, what starts to happen is natural connection back to spirit is often the first point of call that we start to be able to recognize that we do have these guides working with us. Prior to that experience, prior to the spiritual evolution experience, we tend to not recognize that the guides are there. They always have been there. We all have guides. It's not just for some special people. We're all special people. We all have guides. All souls have guides, and we have them assigned to us from birth as we come into this earthly plane. So essentially, the guides are guiding us. You might have these moments before you've gone down the spiritual path where you're like, wow, that was really strange. It was as if I was guided by a higher force, or some intuitive thing happens and you are led down a different direction, and when you go down that different direction you recognize, wow, like somebody else led me there. It felt like a guardian angel. You've probably felt like that before. Let me know in the comments if you've had one of those experiences. This tends to be our spirit team redirecting something or intervening in a way that is really helpful for our soul's mission. And somewhere along the line, that's because our soul has asked for that intervention. Spirit guides and our spirit team, they don't intervene unless we make it obvious that we want them to intervene, okay? They need permission, basically, to intervene. And if something maybe was so challenging in our own personal experience of life at that time, our soul might have asked for that permission. instead of our physical being, if that makes any sense. So prior to a spiritual growth journey, you might have had these experiences where you felt essentially guided. After you start to tap in deeper to your soul's mission and your spiritual path, you will start to notice the spirit guides in varying different forms coming up much more exaggerated. And they might start to come up at the beginning of your spiritual journey in things like signs, synchronicities, numbers, strange things happening that you're like, whoa, that was so divinely guided. I can't even begin to explain it because it didn't feel like it was coming from this earth. It felt like it was coming from a more heavenly plane, right? And as you start to grow down your soul's path, you start to form a relationship with the guides. And this, I've found, this has come very naturally, very intuitively. It's not something that it's like somebody has to tell me how I need to interact with my guides. It has just come very, very naturally. It's part of the soul's growth. So that's how they sort of steadily start to come in. And one of the things that is so powerful about working with your guides, this is the number one thing for me. Now, when you have access to your inner light, which comes through daily, practices where you're actually tuning into yourself. This is really important, right? To be able to observe the mind, the mental chit-chat, observe our emotions, feel our emotions, and bring ourselves back into our center so we can become the observer of our experience instead of continuously reacting to everything. As we start to connect to our light, so really connect and plug into our Kundalini, right? Our truest creative potential, our light and life force. When we connect to this, when we're really integrated in our light, we can be very sovereign in our experience of life. Now, there are many times in life where we don't feel like that, right? Where our spirit is dampened, we feel disconnected, we feel like we're going through an emotionally hard time, we feel like we're going through a mentally hard time, and all of these different things. Now, when you are connected to your light, you are very sovereign in the sense that this is your natural boundary setter. You move through life and you are naturally very connected and aligned to what feels right for you, what doesn't feel right for you. You have a natural boundary setter. You can tell when energy's off, when it's not off, and you are quite the manifester. This is not always the case, right? Life has its ebbs and flows, and we're human. So when we are struggling to connect to our own light, to our own intuition, to our own inner wisdom, this is where our guides come in. And this is where this is a huge support network, right? We're not using our guides. We're all part of one collective experience of life. It's only an illusion that everything is separate. Yeah, everything is not separate. Everything is working in unison. That is how God intended this world, for it to all work in unison. It's only the mind and the matrix of the ego that thinks that everything is separate, right? So we're all one in that sense. So when we're working with our guides, that we're working with a reflection of ourself in that sense as well. So when our light is dimmed, when we're going through a challenging time, this is a beautiful time to connect to your guides. This is like a surrendering state. It's like saying, okay, I need support. I need some help here. Please help me reconnect to my spirit and turn the lights back on, okay? It's very important that we learn how to ask for help. We definitely are, specifically as women actually, we tend to be, I'm not going to ask for help. I'm an individual being. I can do it all by myself. And the way in which we've been taught how to move through life is very much about strength and vigor in the sense of this individualization. And when we start to work with guides, we actually surrender a part of that ego that goes, I must do it all by myself. We allow the support, we allow this incoming of energy that allows us to feel nurtured and loved and cared for. And so spirit guides are a beautiful helpers for our soul's path. When our light can't withstand the path, the mission, the soul's integral moving forward, then spirit guides step in. And they need that permission. right? To step in. And this is a really important part of the guides. And something that I do in this set at this point is I often ask guides to step in certain parts. So for example, I tend to tune into my guides by saying, that little cat on the wall, I'm always noticing cats. Probably they're one of the guides. And what I do is when I tend to tune into my guides is I sit and I say these very specific words. I say, I wish to contact those who love me unconditionally. Thank you for being here. And I say it about 3 times out loud. I wish to contact those who love me unconditionally. Thank you for being here. I wish to contact those who love me unconditionally. Thank you for being here. I call in my guides, spirit guides. I work with unconditional and loving energy only. These are my boundaries. Thank you very much. And then I'll go into whatever form of intuitive approach I want to go with. If I want to contact my ancestors, I might pull a card and I'll be like, can you help me with this reading? Or give me a yes or no answer. If I want to contact my angels, I often contact my angels if I need a little bit of healing. So I'll say, bring some healing energy into my hands and do a little bit of Reiki on the body. You know, they're happy to do this because we're all working together. Yeah. So it's very important to learn how to receive this help. This is so important. And saying thank you and allowing for that receive of help. Often in life, we're giving out so much. And it's very important to learn how to receive. And so spirit guides are there to allow us also how to learn how to receive this help. So that's one of the powers of working with spirit guides. When our own spirit is dampened, when we physically don't have the strength to move on, we can tap into our team and they will help us. And they help us in miraculous ways. I've seen it time and time again. I have had angels who have helped heal my hips. I've had angels help literally align my whole energy system through Reiki sessions. I've had angels literally move obstacles out of my way, mental obstacles and emotional obstacles, so I can move forward with stuff. I've had ancestors who have actually really allowed me to move through strong bits of emotional grief and learn parts of my shadow that I wouldn't have been able to see if they hadn't have guided me into that space. They're very, very powerful, high vibrational beings that you can work with. And over time, you'll develop your own ways in which to work with those beings. So that's where they are so, so powerful. And they're powerful because our soul has a mission. Our soul always knows its mission on this planet. We forget this mission because of the noise of the external world. We're all very, very distracted, specifically mentally, right? So we forget our mission here on Earth. And because of our soul's mission, it always knows its purpose. It always knows where it's going. It always knows its path. It's just hidden. Our spirit guides are part of that path. So when we tap into this ecosystem that we have supporting us and moving us forward and watching out for us and bringing healing into our bodies when we ask for it, basically we're expanding our soul. We're expanding our ability to reconnect to the soul over the mental chit-chat and the subconscious patternings that we hold from the past into now in our bodies and in our nervous system and in our psyche. When we tap into our guides, we tap into something very, very ancient, very, very infinite, something that is always there, it's always true, it's always constant. So we're tapping into the infinite beneath the finite. And this is a very powerful space because it's a space of unconditional love. It's a space that brings hope and faith and trust and resilience into the human experience. Look at that lovely cat. Sorry, I'm such a cat freak at the moment, catching the butterfly. And so what I found on my spiritual journey is this connection to the guides, to our own guides, is very helpful for allowing you to feel less alone in your spiritual path. The spiritual journey, the journey back to the soul, is not an easy journey. It requires a lot of solitude. It requires a lot of strength. It requires a lot of people throwing stones a lot of people not being able to understand your mission because it is very individual to you, and it's not necessarily mainstream, and it doesn't always fit into mainstream society. So it can be a very lonely space to be in, but it's also just when you connect to your soul's mission, your soul's growth, you have no choice. Once you've gone there, you can't go back. It's just this continuous driving force. So connecting to angels and spirit guides is a beautiful way to remind you that you are never ever alone on this mission. You always have a support team and a support network in very high vibrational spaces. So that's something beautiful about connecting to your guides. So a final few things here. Connecting to your guides looks different for everybody. I am a physical medium in the sense that my abilities have sort of grown over time as I've been on my spiritual journey. They have heightened. So my ancestral and angelic connections have become much stronger. So the ways in which I tune in to my spirit guides and my angels might be different to how you do. And over time, it's a journey, and you start to form this relationship whereby each other understands each other and how you're going to connect. For example, I'm a physical medium in the sense that my hands tend to move and do things off their own accord sometimes, but also very directional at the same time. So if I connect to one of my grandmas, one of my ancestors in spirit form, one of my grandmas had really, really terrible rheumatoid arthritis, and her hands were like this. So when she's coming through as a guide, my hand will go like this, and then I know who it is. And she always says through clairaudience, which is clear hearing, "I'm proud of you, Paul." And that's her voice. She always used to say it when I left, and it comes back in when I connect to her. So it comes through a physical sensation through my hand, an audio sensation, and then I speak to my grandma and ask for some guidance in that sense. I might have another way in which I connect to guides. For example, I might know when my granddad comes through because he had a numb lip, and so his lip used to go down like this. And so when my granddad comes through, my lip quivers like this. And then I'm like, "Hi, Granddad, it's you." So over time, you might develop these little signs and symbols. Whether you have this more physical mediumship ability or not, we all have psychic abilities. There are God-given abilities. We've just covered them over time because we've been told that they're not real. What a load of rubbish. What a load of bloody rubbish. So we all have different ways in which we might connect. So you might be more clairsentient, which is more of a gut feeling. It's like, okay, I know how I'm connecting here. It's more feeling sensory, like this physical mediumship. You might be more clairaudience, which is from the heart space. So you might have that dropping of a word, or you might hear something, or you might tune in that way. You might be more clairvoyant, so you might see something, so you might see more of like a symbol or an object or a vision, something like that, and you might connect in that way. You might have all three quite activated, and so you might have varying different ways in which you recognise when your guides are coming through. And as I say, this is something that sort of intuitively develops over time. But if you want to connect to your guides, you want to start to connect to your guides, the best way to start recognising it, if you're on this sort of spiritual journey, is really looking out for signs and symbols. You can simply ask your guides for a sign or a symbol. You can say, "Send me a sign in nature." And naturally, your intuitive abilities, as they start to grow, you'll recognise what the sign is. It will come then with some sort of light message that you have to slightly decode. But one thing that I always tend to teach is we don't necessarily have to decode everything. We don't always have to find out exactly what the sign means, exactly what the numbers mean when they come through. We don't have to decode exactly, that the exact message, because it doesn't always come through in a very sort of like, I know exactly how to go through my life right now. It doesn't come through in that way. The message is direct, but it is not how to figure out your whole life, if that makes sense. So it might come through as a yes or no answer, and then you've got an intuitive direction to go forward with. But say you're pulling a card or something, the card might be something that you might need to sort of figure out. Sometimes that comes over the next few days. But it's very important not to get attached to the message, because instead what we're really doing here is we're just allowing for this guidance to come through in a less linear way. The mind wants everything to have an outcome. The mind wants everything to have a exact answer. Whereas intuitive things, they come through quite directly when they need to, never fearful. They're never scary, they're never fearful. Yeah, that's the mind latching on. That's the nervous system latching on to messages. Guides are never fear-inducing. Yeah, when you're connecting to an unconditional loving space, and you can use that as a boundary. They're never fear-inducing. They're always very direct and very, very loving. So as you're bringing these messages through, you can start to look at signs and symbols and words and quick downloads that might come into your ears, or energy that you might feel in your hands. And you might start to just recognize these things, and they're very individual. The very individual can't put a direct anything onto them because they're not coming from the logical space. They're coming from the magical space, right? Which is much more real to me than logic. Strangely enough, both of which are just as important for the human experience, but the most direct thing to me is the soul. And the soul speaks in non-linear terms. It's the mind that brings linear and form to the soul. So looking out for those signs and symbols, and without having any obligation or expectation or having to have an outcome of how you want your guides to come through. Just letting it go and watching out for the magic in a very aware space. So one of the things that you can do to start to connect to your guides is really spend a lot of time in stillness and connect to your awareness. When I find that I'm very balanced in the chakra system, in my energy body, then I find that I can connect to my guides much easier, because we're essentially starting to reconnect to our intuitive senses. Yeah, the more spider senses beneath the five senses. Gut, heart, head. So there we have it, my friends. So really start to connect to some spiritual practices. Maybe things like breath, movement, sound. Absolutely brilliant. I teach Kundalini yoga. The doors are actually open for my Living in Light course, which is an 8-week journey through the chakras, using Kundalini yoga, connecting you back to these intuitive centers, bringing you back to that infinite space inside, which is the soul. So if you want any more info on that, the link is below. But yeah, using your practices, using your tools to bring yourself back to your center all of the time. And from that space of presence is where you're going to be able to access your spirit team more. So if you want to know any more about guidance and working with your guides, let me know in the comments if you found this interesting, or you want any more videos around this. Let me know what's interesting to you and we'll go ahead. Lots of love, have a wonderful day, and ciao for now.